So Andrew, why don't I mean Google's just made a recent change to their Google Ads platform,
Mm.
right? Why don't you talk about that? It's probably a good fit here.
Okay, so yeah, they have made a few changes to their platform, and actually one which builds on Charlie's point. So the first thing which they've done is that they have incentivized the um, pay after you stay option, essentially. So what they've done is they've made it possible for hotels to only have to pay once the guest has stayed in the hotel and at a lower commission rate than previously. So actually you can start commission rates as low as 1%, which sounds great in theory. The slight challenge with that is that they have also at the same time, actually in the US and on mobile platforms, just opened up the Google Hotel Ads platform to alternative accommodation. They've just opened up, not Airbnb actually, but Expedia platforms, so Home Away, for example, and now gaining access to the hotel ads product. And competition is good for Google. And that's why it's also interesting, because right now there's less competition for paid advertising. So there are bargains to be had. And this is where we need to be a bit careful with now versus long-term trends. But as that competition picks up, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because our experience is generally that for hotels which are in high demand, there's a lot of people bidding on them. So particularly from online travel agents, they're actually generally better with a CPC model rather than a pay later model, because you can adjust your bids to ensure your visibility on the platform. Whereas if you're on a model where you're not offering a lot of commission, you will basically get bidded down the order on the platform. So it's interesting. It's much more accessible for hotels than perhaps it has been in the past to be on the Google Ads platform. And right now, there's a lot of sense. And as Charlie was saying, with the property description ads in combination, it could be super interesting, because that does give you some top of the funnel visibility too. But it's going to be, I think, a sort of strange period right now until we start to see the online travel agents then come back in anger. And then I suspect we will see that it's almost like a sort of the old trick of tempt you in with free and then bring the prices up. That some of these people who may have come in on a very low commission basis, where they can access the platform without having an upfront commitment, which is great, don't get me wrong, we'll start to see that they might have to pay a little bit more, give away a little bit more commission, or switch to CPC to maintain visibility once bidding competition comes back. So short term, really interesting. Definitely the property description ads are super interesting, but long term, I think it remains to be seen whether that's something which is so sustainable moving forward, particularly for larger hotels which have to drive greater productivity through the platform.
I think that will be really interesting. And then even kind of that, but on a smaller scale, when you talk about the OTAs or travel ads or things like that, it's going to be really interesting to see. It was all over in the news where a lot of the super hosts and Airbnb hosts were very upset with the platform for just offering all the cancellations, things like that. A lot of these hosts are over leveraged in their properties, and they're not able to pay their bills, and maybe having to look at selling their properties, not rent them out anymore. But the ones that do exist, are they going to shift maybe from where they're hosting and move more towards something like VRBO or Home Away that's partnered with Expedia, and just what that's going to look like, that competitive landscape then on Expedia for the hotels, with those all showing up in the search results, on whether that's just going to become an even huger market on Expedia. I know their CEO said in a previous earnings call, I think, that they're seeing decent growth from Home Away and from that segment. So just what happens with the different competitors there. Vacasa just had a huge funding round that just closed. They're a little bit different because they're more centrally and professionally managed vacation rentals, a little bit different kind of market scale than what's on Airbnb, but just where these hosts go, and does the rental pool shrink, or is it going to shift to different platforms, and just how?
Yeah, I think we've seen a bit of that in Europe already, particularly with Booking.com. So you can see that two things really. Firstly, it's almost like that space is starting to become, I'm not sure if professionalized is the right word, but we've seen Google acquire or reach an arrangement for Casa. We've seen Google introducing alternative accommodation onto their hotels platform more aggressively. We've seen Expedia talking up Vrbo, Home and Away, their alternative platform. And in Europe, a lot of accommodation that you find on Airbnb, you'll also find on Booking.com, and rentals has been one of their largest growing categories. So you almost see that sort of OTA-ization, if you include Google in that sort of sphere of that space, which is going to be interesting. And we've seen, I wouldn't say a massive sort of headlong rush, but we've started to see a number of perhaps the larger property owners, perhaps the ones who maybe aren't quite in the bad financial situation that you talked about, but we've seen an increase in them coming to talk to us about creating their own websites, building their own booking engines. And it's interesting because it's the same conversation that we've been having with hotels for a while, is how do you diversify your distribution? What percentage should you invest in direct versus online travel agent channels, and how do you balance the economics of that? Whereas perhaps for a lot of them in the past, it was really put my property on Airbnb or whatever the local platform was, and just be pretty much soulless distribution on there. So certainly changing for sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I'm looking out for is when, there are a lot of companies that are hard hit at the moment. And I wonder if some of the traditional hotel management companies are going to take this as an opportunity to get into vacation rentals more. And if they do, no doubt they'll bring with that more of the practices of trying to drive direct bookings and own the point of distribution. So that's one to look out for.
Absolutely.
All right. Good discussion.